Welcome to United Way of Forsyth County's Lunch and Learn, featuring our new president and CEO, Dr. Antonia Monk Richburg. My name is Tricia Coleman, and I'm the chair of United Way's Board of Directors. We are so glad you're joining us today. We're excited for each of you to learn more about Antonia.
Yes.
Oh, sounds like there's some noise in the background, so I'm hoping everyone's on mute for now. Okay, before we formally get started, I want to explain how today's event will unfold. In a few moments, I will lead a question and answer interview session with Antonia. During the session, you will have the opportunity to learn more about Antonia's experience, her life, and her outlook on United Way's work. Speaking from experience, you will not be disappointed. After I lead the Q&A session, we will want to give you the opportunity to ask a few questions by typing them in the chat box. As we make our way through today's meeting, please feel free to type your questions in the chat at any time, and we'll do our best to answer them when we reach that part of the program. Now, before I introduce Antonia, I do want to give you a little background on how we got to where we are today. For those who may not know, United Way's previous president and CEO, Cindy Gardenier, retired after 11 years serving our organization and community. In early 2022, United Way formed a search committee comprised of representation from our board, our community, and our partner agencies to find and interview the most qualified candidates we could. And Dr. Antonia Monk Richburg was selected and approved as our president and CEO by the United Way Board of Directors. It was an extensive process led by some extraordinary people to find our next extraordinary leader. Antonia's career in the For Impact sector began with the Greensboro Housing Authority, and she has more than 30 years of experience in nonprofit management, community build, and strategic communications. Throughout this call, you'll learn about her life experiences, her educational background, her career trajectory, and passion for the work. Without further ado, it brings me great pleasure to officially welcome Dr. Antonia Monk Richburg.
Good morning, and Tricia, thank you for such a great introduction. I am truly humbled and excited to be here. Thank you to everyone who's joined today. I hope you leave this lunch and learn not only with a better understanding of who I am, but more importantly, with a better understanding of the great work you are supporting in this community. Rest assured, the equitable community work that Forsyth County has undertaken in partnership with United Way will continue. I genuinely look forward to meeting each one of you in person as I get out and about in this community. And let me say this before we go any further. While I've been tapped to lead United Way of Forsyth County, I will never approach this work independently. I understand and appreciate the value of working together. I'm here to listen to and serve this community. The great things that we will accomplish together will be thanks to your voice and support, the great work of our volunteers and our incredibly talented staff. At the end of the day, when we work together, we are going to change lives and continue to secure a positive future for everyone in our community.
Antonia, that's what it's all about, securing our community's future by working together. I'm so glad we have you on our team. So what do you say? You ready for a little Q&A?
Absolutely.
So where are you from?
Well, I was born in Smithfield, North Carolina, and my family moved to Goldsboro when I was 8. I graduated from UNC Greensboro with a bachelor's degree in speech communications and a master's degree in public affairs. I then went on to receive my PhD in leadership studies from North Carolina A&T State University. I'm married with 3 children, 3 stepchildren, and a miniature schnauzer.
Why have you dedicated your entire career to addressing poverty?
I've dedicated my life and career to advocating for people experiencing poverty and being a catalyst for change primarily because I was born and raised in poverty in rural Eastern North Carolina and know firsthand what it's like to live in impoverished neighborhoods and in rent control housing facilities. While others can only imagine what it must be like to live in public housing, I can share firsthand the impact of that experience on my life. I remember the years of walking to the laundromat, walking to the grocery store, or to my grandmother's to use a telephone, since I lived in a home with no phone, washer, or dryer, and we had no car until I was 9. I know what it's like to go to the emergency room with no insurance and watch my mom advocate for medical care for me, although she worked every day but could not afford medical insurance. So I wake up every day with a desire to help our most vulnerable populations. This lived experience of living in poverty for a decade before my mom transitioned us from the working poor to what would be considered the lower middle class. And then one day we arrived and we were what was called the middle class. And when she died at the early age of 49, she had worked really hard and was considered upper middle class. I believe this is a calling for me to help others move their families out of poverty. I believe I was called to work daily to ensure that all voices are heard and valued. I was called in my mind to develop and support programs that are designed to change the trajectory of so many residents who were born into generational poverty and feel like they lack the resources to break this cycle. According to relevant estimates, Forsyth County is the 3rd lowest ranked county in the United States for upward economic mobility. In fact, the county is 3rd from the bottom out of over 3,000 counties in terms of the probability that a child born into poverty will eventually escape it later in life. This is an astounding finding, especially when placed alongside the county's positive characteristics. President Barack Obama once said, "Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek." And so I came to Forsyth County to help us change the trajectory of so many lives in our community.
Antonia, what is your experience when it comes to bringing communities together?
I have a wealth of experience working with those who provide services as well as those in need of assistance. I have spent the last 3 decades convening community groups to address the most critical issues faced by the most vulnerable populations. I enjoy bringing groups together who have disparate views and working with them to build bridges that help those in need to move beyond the day-to-day struggle to survive and to get to the point of actually thriving in our community.
So how does your experience with a health-centric foundation translate into helping with our 3 focus areas?
Well, I have a great amount of experience addressing the social determinants of health, which are those conditions in the environment where people are born, where we live, work, play, worship, and age that affect a wide range of health, functioning, and quality of life outcomes and risks. Safe housing, transportation, neighborhoods, racism, discrimination, violence, education, job opportunities, income. Those are all things that we addressed in my former role at the Health Foundation. We also looked at, how's the air quality and the language and literacy skills. All of those things were factored in. So we're not just focused on health, we're focused on the whole person. And all of these align with our 3 focus areas here at United Way: creating equitable communities, improving economic mobility, and ensuring childhood and student success.
Well, we know we can't do that without fundraising. So what is your experience when it comes to raising dollars?
Well, I'll start out by saying I'm a seasoned grant writer and reviewer. And as United Way continues to adjust to the changes in the workplace, it is imperative that we diversify our revenue streams. So grants have become a vital tool for us. I also have experience working with local philanthropists and volunteer groups to garner financial support for strategic initiatives and special events designed to raise funds. I've worked for the world's largest health philanthropy, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, as a program manager and national communications officer. And for the past 23 years, I've worked as the vice president and senior program officer for the Cone Health Foundation. In both of those roles, I was afforded the opportunity and autonomy to establish policies and procedures to ensure the ultimate success of the organization. In addition, I've worked for several years at United Way of Greater Greensboro, managing grant processes, leading strategic efforts to develop well-articulated case statements, to garner financial support, and meeting one-on-one with potential donors for planned gifts. And during my time with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, I also had the opportunity to work right here in Winston-Salem at the Bowman Gray School of Medicine, which enabled me to work closely with the university's leadership and the physicians.
So what would you say to donors to keep them supporting the work that we do at United Way of Forsyth County?
Well, first off, I want to show some appreciation. So I say thank you. Your support and commitment to our community is a continued blessing. All our contributors, whether you're donating money, time, skill, maybe you're just sharing your personal stories or helping us build trust, makes this community greater each day. As we continue to collaborate on solving community issues, I want to highlight one of the biggest factors to ending poverty, and that is ensuring children have an education. For any child, education can open doors to the future that would otherwise be locked tight. Even the most basic education, reading, writing, and math, can open doors to futures that would otherwise be closed. So help us empower people to lift themselves out of poverty. We need the support of our community to affect positive change for our neighbors.
So circling back to you, Antonia, what kind of leader are you?
I would say that I'm a servant leader who leads in a way that embodies core values such as respect, inclusiveness, honesty, compassion, cooperation, and humility. My leadership embodies Dusty Staub's 7 acts of courage. I have the courage to dream, the courage to see the current reality, the courage to confront, the courage to also be confronted, the courage to learn and grow, the courage to be vulnerable, and the courage to act.
Very well put. What are your immediate goals?
Wow, there's so much to be done here in Forsyth County, but my immediate goals, number one, is to establish new relationships, to restore old relationships throughout the Forsyth community, to strengthen our business and community partnerships, to stabilize our workplace campaign, to diversify our revenue streams, and to build bridges that lead to a more equitable and just community.
Now, we're coming up on a big year in our existence, the United Way of Forsyth County's 100th anniversary. What would you say to the community to gain their support for the next 100 years?
So here at United Way of Forsyth County, we're working to create a thriving community by investing in neighborhoods and households with a specific focus on creating equitable communities, improving economic mobility, and ensuring child and student success. United Way of Forsyth County invests in over 60 programs and initiatives with more than 40 local partner nonprofit organizations. So I want you to join us in closing the gaps that Forsyth County faces. While we tackle current community needs head on and alongside great partners, we know that there are new issues will arise in our region's future. We have been a constant in this community for so long because of our unique position to see the needs from a high level view while also being invested in community work at the grassroots level. And we will continue this great work for all the years ahead. And we recognize that there are things that we may have to do differently as we move forward, and we stand ready and capable of doing that. So we're excited about this 100th anniversary, and we look forward to working with you all.
So am I. And that I've asked you a lot. Antonia. I feel like even though I've gotten to know you through our interview process, I've gotten to know you even better through the question and answers. I hope that everyone who joined us is getting to get a better sense of you as well. Let's give our audience a chance to ask some questions. As mentioned at the beginning of the call, we ask that you submit some questions through the chat. Casey, I'm going to turn it over to you, our United Way's Director of Strategic Communications and Public Relations. She's been monitoring the chat box.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Tricia. We did get a question come in. Dr. Richburg, can you share a little more on your listening tour plans and hopes for these conversations?
So starting the listening tour on next week, and my plans as it relates to the listening tour is to hear all of the voices in our community. I want to hear what you have to say in terms of what's going well in Forsyth County. What are the things that we need to focus on as we begin our next 100 years of working in this community? You know, how can we be more engaged in the community? How can we better partner with you? I just want to hear what you have to say, and I want to hear that from every sector of our community. So I'm super excited about this listening tour, Uniting the Gap, community listening tour. And so if you're having a meeting, I'd love to be able to join in and just listen to what's happening. If you if there's anything going on in the community that you think I should be at, please let me know. If you'd like to have a one-on-one session, I'm up for that as well. I'd love to have an opportunity to hear from you, the community. What is it that we need to do in this next 100 years to make positive changes for all the people who live, work, and play in Forsyth County?
That's great. Thank you, Dr. Richburg. I received another question in the chat. How is Dr. Richburg planning to address the changing fundraising landscape for United Way in Forsyth County? Very good question.
So as I alluded to earlier, because we do have a change in the landscape as it relates to fundraising, one of the things that we want to do is to shore up our grant writing, and so that we are applying for more grants and getting more grant revenue in. And then also we're looking at trying to think of creative ways that we can do some more fundraising. We're looking at planned giving and really working with our major donors to see other ways that we can be creative in terms of bringing revenue into United Way. But one of the major things that we'll be doing is trying to receive more grant funds to help our organizations do the vital work that they're doing in the community to ensure that there are positive changes to those who are struggling to survive here in Forsyth County.
Thank you. Another time for a couple more questions here. We have a question from somebody who just recently came from Atlanta, Georgia. So thank you for joining us today on this call. Could you possibly speak to your experience and your learning so far on the state of housing and affordability in Forsyth County? We know that you've been here for a brief period of time, but that has been a big conversation in this region. Can you tell us a little more about what you've learned, Dr. Richburg, and what you're hoping to hear more of in our community on this topic?
So I've only been here for a few weeks, but of course, you know, I heard right away about the need for us to be more effective in terms of addressing the affordable housing. There's so many people in our community that even the affordable housing is not affordable for them. And so we've got to figure out, how do we address this in this community? And so it's not something that United Way can do alone. We have to do that with partners. And so we stand ready to convene some groups so that we can begin to have some more in-depth conversations in terms of what can we actually do in this community to ensure that we have enough affordable housing for those that are struggling with that. And so over the next few weeks, we're going to be talking to some key partners and then working to convene some groups so that we can actually strategize to figure out how we would do that effectively here in Forsyth County.
That's great, thank you. I think we could probably do two more questions. And then one of the nice factors is in our follow-up, we can always address more questions that the group may have. And then we have such a great listening tour available for audience members to have that one-on-one engagement with Dr. Richburg. We had a great question for Dr. Richburg. What sectors and businesses are you interested in speaking with?
I want to speak to all sectors of the business community. I don't think that there's any sector that should be overlooked. They're all contributing to our community, to our economic mobility. And so it's my goal to speak to all sectors. I want to talk to the major companies that we have here, the mid-size, the small businesses. All of those are equally important to our United Way. And so I'm hopeful that I'll be able to talk to individuals at all of those different companies. And I was talking to one of the CEOs on yesterday, and we were strategizing how we might be able to to put together some dinners where we could invite people from the different from the business community to come together to talk about how we can work collaboratively to address some of the critical issues in our community. So I'm looking forward to talking to all sectors.
That's perfect. I did have another question. I felt like we had time for it, so I'm going to keep sneaking them in. How is United Way thinking about supporting early care and education in the education community in Forsyth County, given the struggle with childcare availability and our focus on third grade reading levels?
So United Way recognizes that if we're going to move the needle in terms of having children to be reading proficiently by the third grade, that we have to start sooner in terms of the interventions. And so we are looking at the possibilities of how can we support our youth at an earlier age. You know, how can we be supportive with pre-K? How can we raise funds that will support pre-K so that we can have pre-K opportunities for children that are living in areas where they don't have access to that or they can't afford it? And so we're looking now in terms of how can we raise funds to address that, both pre-K and then also looking at how do we provide support for those individuals in the summertime, so that we have summer enrichment camps that are available for children that are living in low wealth neighborhoods, so that they have the same opportunities that those have that live on the other side of town, right? So we recognize the importance of doing both of those, because if we're going to actually get to a point where our children are proficient by the third grade, we have to make sure that they are making strides early on. And so we are very aware of that, and we are focusing our efforts on trying to raise funds to support that work.
That is wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Richburg. I think we covered a majority of our questions. We have a couple that are a little bit more individual questions that I will help us follow up on after the fact. But thank you for answering so many of those, Dr. Richburg. I know that before we end the session today, Antonia had a couple more items to bring up, invite you to another virtual event, and ask you to save a special date coming up. So I will turn it back over to Dr. Richburg to have some kind of closing comments and some reminders for the group.
Thank you, Casey. So thank you again to everyone who joined us today. And thank you, Tricia, for being such a phenomenal leader to our board of directors and a great community leader in Forsyth County. I really enjoyed this call, and I'm looking forward to the next time that we get together. And speaking of next time, there are two upcoming gatherings I want to share with you. First, on December the 8th from 12 to 1, we'll be hosting another virtual front porch conversation focused on place-based initiatives with our faith, community, and funded programs. Casey is putting the registration link into the chat now, and we'll be sure to include the invitation in our follow-up email. Lastly, I'm excited to ask you to save the date for our birthday celebration on February the 6th, 2023, when United Way of Forsyth County turns 100. So stay tuned for all the details in your inbox shortly. And thank you again for your support and for joining us today. Please continue to support this important work in 2022 and 2023. Have a great day, and we hope to see you soon.